So the first thing you want to do when you're working with normal curve problems is make a little sketch, and especially when you get the 68, 95, 99.7 rule. Mark the mean in the middle. They're telling us there's a mean of 50, and then we're going to draw 3 lines on the right side of the 50 of the mean and 3 lines on the left side of the 50. Now the 68 corresponds to 1 standard deviation either side of the mean. So I'm going to add 10, which is the standard deviation, of the 50 to get 60. I'll add it again to get 70. I'll add it again to get 80. On the left side of the mean, I'm going to subtract it. So 50 minus 10 is 40. 40 minus 10 is 30. And 30 minus 10 is 20. And that accounts for 99.7, or practically all of the population that we're dealing with. Okay, so what percent of scores? So maybe I ought to back up a little bit here. If I'm going 1 standard deviation either side of the mean, so between 40 and 60, that counts for about 68% of the normal distribution will fall between those two numbers, because they're 1 standard deviation either side of the mean. That's the first number. And in light of that, why don't I finish that thought? If there's 68% between them, that means there's 32%, or 100 minus 68, that falls outside that. And since this is symmetric, that tells me there's 16% above them, 16% below them. And that means it's at the 16th percentile. Now if I go out 2 standard deviations all the way down to 30, all the way up to 70, because those are 2 standard deviations above and below the mean, or below and above the mean. That accounts for 95% of the distribution. And notice that's the second number in the 68, 95, 99.7 rule. And also 100 minus 95 tells me there's 5% outside that, and it's symmetric, so half's above the 70 and 2.5% is below the 30. And then for the last one, where I mentioned it was 99.7%, those are 3 standard deviations away from the mean, either side. That accounts for 99.7, or practically all. I wrote 90. It won't let me erase. Okay, 7%. And if we do 100 minus that, that's 0.3%. So 0.15% above, 0.15% below. Practically nothing. So let's see if we can answer these questions now that we've got that all set up. So what percent of the scores lie less than 50? Well, 50 is the mean. It's also the median, because this is a symmetric distribution, which tells me there's 50% less than 50. It's unfortunate that 50 and 50 match up, but I said I wanted that to confuse you. Less than 60. Well, 60 is 1 standard deviation above the mean. I know, a couple of ways to do this. I know that there's the 68% that's below it, and then the additional 16, so I could just add those two numbers and get 84%. The other way to do it is take 100 minus that 16%, and that would give me that also, so 84%. Greater than 70. Well, 70 is 2 standard deviations above the mean, so above that we already decided was 2.5%. Hope you're starting to get the hang of this. Greater than 40. Well, 40 is 1 standard deviation below the mean, and they're asking us to find the percentage of the population that's above that. Well, isn't that the same percentage as below the 60? So I could do 100 minus 16, and that would give me above it, or I could just think back to what I did a minute ago, and that would also be 84%. And between 40 and 70, now that gets to be starting to be a little trickier. 40 and 70. So I know that this, between 40 and 60, accounts for 68% of the distribution. Then we've got to think about, well, 70 is 2 standard deviations. Okay. Well, I guess the best way to approach this to help you understand this is, if this is 68%, I know that that left blue side, and why don't I write in blue, is 32%, or half of it. I'm going to go to black because I can't even see what I'm writing. So 32% of the distribution falls between 40 and 50. And then half of the 95, right, because this is 2 standard deviations above the mean, 95 divided by 2, or 47.5, will fall in this range here. I'll draw vertical red lines to try to differentiate. So that is 47.5, and if we add those two areas together, the 32 and the 47.5, what is that, 79.5? So about 80%. There are a few different kinds of normal curve sketches on the web. There's one that actually shows you the percentages between each of these. I'll try to find that and post that in Moodle below this video. Hope that helps.